All right, welcome to another Mac Rak informative video. What we're going to be doing today is talking about rack protection products. 7 ways to guard your warehouse against forklift impact. So we're going to be focusing on creating a plan for your warehouse on how to install protective guards on the columns of your warehouse system so that you can protect against forklift impact. So how do we do that? Let's first underline the importance of this. The real cost of unprotected racks is, of course, catastrophic failure, which is what we want to avoid altogether. But the maintenance costs, the downtime, the injuries, and the loss of product and inventory that you could have are significant, let alone the fines and the penalties that you could get from OSHA and other inspection agencies. So rack protection products need to be in compliance with industry standards. The NSI standard states that collisions with forklift trucks or other moving equipment with the front columns are the single most important source of structural distress of storage rack. Racking systems need to have adequate protection against impacts according to the governmental standards. They need to have adequate protection. The first way is the provision for protective devices that will prevent forklifts and trucks from hitting the exposed columns. That's according to the regulating bodies of the United States. So how do we do that, and how do we get a good inspection plan? So how do we do that? What's the first step? The first thing is we need to have a series of questions, 7 questions we'll talk about, for your warehouse rack protection needs. How do you determine what they should be? How do you determine where you should be installing your racks, your rack protection? So what you need to first assess is do a study about your traffic flow analysis. What are your most heavily trafficked areas? And you need to pay attention to those in particular. That might be the road that you must travel all the time to get to and from the loading docks, things of that nature. Areas that are in the back of the warehouse that rarely get accessed, those might be less significant. But your most significant areas, invest in protection products there first. That's the first. The second is high levels of pick and place. Where are your forklifts going and traveling through? Is there a pattern where they're picking and placing a certain product again and again? You might want to think that to prioritize that particular section of rack with greater amounts of protection and protection devices. Next, you need to ask yourself, what is the rack system type that you have? And there are going to be different priorities for each one of these types of racks. So drive-in racks are going to need protection just in the front areas of the racking systems, but there's going to be a lot of forklifts going in and out of those drive-in racks. Pallet flow racks are going to have a particular issue with the front again, and they're not going to be accessing deep into the racking system. Now, selective racking, you're going to have forklifts traveling up and down those rows constantly. And usually those are wider aisles that allow for the maneuvering of trucks within there. So you have to worry about both sides, the front and the back of those systems might be affected by a forklift going back and forth. Now, your very narrow aisle racks are going to need non-protruding protective systems. So since there's not much room within those aisles, so you need to think about a non-protruding protector in those particular scenarios. Now, the pushback racks, again, are going to be focused on the front end of those systems. So you need to be probably thinking more about the front end of just a few of those racks rather than anything towards the back of those racks as well. So you can see it changes and varies based on your assessment of the type of rack you have. Another thing to prioritize is the already damaged areas. Past damage areas are obviously an indication that this area is prone to damaging. So when you replace it, you might want to think that when you put in a repair kit, you use a Mac Rak repair kit that has a protector that's already built into it. So that's one thing that you could take advantage of. The other thing you're going to want to assess is your inventory weight. That's a consideration. Those racks that are supporting greater weight than others are going to need greater protection down the bottom because there's greater potential energy for catastrophic failure. And in these situations, one of the things to keep in mind is that you can consult your warehouse software that will give you some indication where there's higher traffic, higher loads, and higher pick and place situations that are going on. So that's something where you could build a report that might give you some indication as to what part of your warehouse you should focus on first. Now, the other thing that is important is the height of the rack. If you've got a certain section of your racking system that have tremendous height, then that column at the bottom is going to be mission critical for keeping this whole system in place. So you might want to prioritize having a protective guard at the base of each one of these column frames. And finally, we've got your current rack design. Now, there are certain portions of your rack that might be housing critical systems. There might be sprinkler systems, there might be electrical conduits that are nestled into the design of the rack. Those areas are going to be critical to have additional guarding and protection on those columns that are going to be interlaced with those systems that are critical to the functioning and the well-being of your entire racking system. So guard those first. So, pallet rack protection considerations for new and existing warehouses. There are a couple of questions that you might ask differently when you're installing a new system versus an existing system. So for new warehouses, you have the opportunity to start fresh. Keep in mind that most OEM systems, the racking does not have protective gear already built into it. So you'll need to address a third-party system like Mac Rak to address your needs for this type of racking. You'll need to call in a third-party product like Mac Rak that builds guards that can protect your OEM racking in those critical areas. So consult with your engineer where you feel like there's going to be high engineer flow, where there's going to be high flow rates, or there's going to be other issues that we've already discussed that might be within your racking. And in the new racking design, incorporate Mac Rak protectors into your overall design from the very start. Now, in existing warehouses, you might have a limited budget, so you might need to start to assess the situation like we gave you earlier and assess where you want to invest in rack protection first and have a multi-year plan to begin to reinforce your entire racking system with something like a Mac Rak protection system so that you can have protection on every single area of your racking system. So let's move into the advantages of Mac Rak. So let's just look at a few different type of products, different types of guards, because Mac Rak is one of the biggest lines of rack protection products that is out there. So you have a good idea of what options you might have when choosing a rack repair product. So let's look at engineering. Mac Rak products are always engineered to the highest specifications. We want to exceed the damage potential, the weight potential that you could be facing, so that the robustness of our protection and guard products will be able to protect against any eventuality that you might have. So we always have superior engineering, and we actually use engineers rather than just guessing. Many of the products that you find online that tout themselves as guards are just simply tacked together in some foreign plant like in China, painted with a spray paint and shipped out as protective material. And it's never been engineered to actually stop a forklift in its tracks, but ours are. And you'll see some of the advantages of that. They're built with structural steel that is either 3/8 inch to a 1/2 inch in thickness. It's super robust with a low yield strength and a low tensile strength. It's specifically designed with a high impact yield strength that is better for this kind of situation than is roll form, which is the steel that most rack is built out of. So we use structural steel components that give you additional strengths. And then we use structural steel components. The structural steel is formed in a different way than roll form steel, and so it's thicker and has a higher yield strength. That means it's going to have higher impact resistance from forklifts. Additional anchor points is another critical element in the Mac Rak lineup. Now this is a typical 5-inch anchor. We typically encourage people to use 7-inch anchors. The 7-inch anchors have a larger diameter and they're larger in length. So they're going to significantly increase the impact resistance against a forklift, because all of the energy of a forklift has to be transferred via these anchors to the concrete floor, rather than it being transferred to a system that is bolted onto your racking. We're actually bolting our anchors to the floor, so that's where all the impact is being transferred to the floor, and that floor is what's going to be taking the impact and bracing you. So our larger anchors are going to increase the stability of your system and they're going to be able to increase the impact that you can withstand. Now, Mac Rak products are all made in the USA using domestic steel sourced in the USA. Much of the products that you see online are going to be sourced with foreign steel and imported into the United States. And you think, oh, these are cheap. Yes, that's exactly it. They are cheap. How many of us have seen products that we get home and even the metal breaks, the screwdriver falls to shreds, that screw that you're putting in that Chinese product just disintegrates while you're trying to tighten it down. That's because they don't have standards of steel like we do here in the United States. Everything in the Mac Rak inventory has traced back to the mill, and it is mill certified so that you know that you're getting top quality steel. Mac Rak uses AWS certified welders to weld all of our materials, so you're getting high quality welds and high quality steel. Nothing but the best goes into Mac Rak products, so that you can be assured that when you buy a Mac Rak product, you're getting the best product to protect your racking systems that is available on the market today. Now, we have superior design over plastic. Now, a lot of people will even go so far as putting little plastic bumpers, and that might bring you within technical compliance of the racking systems mandate that you have some sort of protector on your columns, but that will only give you surface level advantages of that impact from a 9,000 pound forklift. Will go through that plastic in a heartbeat and cause structural damage. Rather than just protecting the surface of the paint, you need to go deeper and protect the structural integrity of your racking systems. So we exceed the current designs, like I said earlier. What we're trying to do is not give you a product that will be adequate, but something that will be more. Our Mac Rak guards and protective products are engineered to withstand the forklift impacts that are out there in the market. And that is not true of many of the products that you see online today. Finally, there are many color options in powder coating that is unique to our product line. Instead of just getting a light spray paint coat and then turning it over to you, you get a powder coat finish that will give you a multi-year lasting finish that is actually bonded to the steel itself. And this will keep your protection systems not only looking like they belong to your racking system because of the appropriate colors, but they also provide enhanced longevity for your system due to the quality of the finishes. Let's take an overview of Mac Rak products specifically. What exactly are their products and how can they be used to your advantage? Well, first of all, we have the MaxGuard V-nose. This will be used for standard duty. It has an anchor point in the front of the V-nose here, and it's going to be used for standard wider aisles because it's extruding out into the aisle. So you need a wide aisle in order to use this particular guard. Now, the MaxGuard Force non-protruding is going to be something that can help you in a narrow aisle. It also comes in a protruding V-nose option as well, as you see here. So if you've got a wider aisle, you can choose the protruding, which has an anchor point both in the front of the protector as well as in the back. So we have two anchor points within this system. And this system as well has two anchor points, but they're both behind the system. So it provides all of that transference energy in two robust anchors rather than just one in this particular situation. Now, this situation is going to be ideal for situations where you're going to have a lot of forks coming in and out of your situation, maybe a little bit higher off the ground for some reason. So you're going to have a higher protection up the column than you would with any of these other ones. So, and then finally we have MaxGuard Shield, which is going to shield you into place up higher off of the ground, and it bolts onto the racking system to prevent those blades from your forks causing all sorts of damage on your columns. But again, it's a product for some point up above on your frame rather than on the floor that is bolted into the ground. All right, now let's look at the next class of guards from Mac Rak. We have end of aisle guards. The formed end guards are for narrow aisle applications because it comes closer to the actual column and gives you more clearance. Now the rounded end of aisle protector is going to give you something that it protrudes into the aisle and gives you more protection from impact because of the greater space to the column. So if you have a wider aisle, you can choose for the rounded end protector. Then we have our dock door end guards, which are super robust double-sided guards that allow for that dock door end guard so that you can protect your racking systems there. So that brings us to the end of this summary of how you can protect your racking systems with rack guards. There are 7 areas that you need to know in order to assess your system appropriately and pick the right guards and the right columns to start protecting first. So if you need assistance and to help you make the assessment correctly and get a plan in place for your protection needs for your warehouse to keep you and your warehouse functioning, compliant, and safe. So call Mac Rak and we're here to help you with your guard protection plans.